Centuries ago, a war was fought, and Rigoria was destroyed. But in a last-ditch effort, there was one elf who buried a little bit of magic.
I don't guarantee anyone will find it.
Let's hope someone does.
One young man
Pops, what is this?
will have to end a war started long before his time.
Can't run!
His spell has taken hold. This is the last possible chance this world may have.
Echoes of Rigoria, now available wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. It has been kind of a weird week for gaming news, but we have a few big talkers to discuss, and it just so happens two of the biggest news stories are business related. So I've invited my dear friend Mike Futter back on the show to chat all about two of the industry's biggest publishers completely disrupting their businesses. Mike, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I hope the industry starts doing great, because this week has been a weird one.
It sure has been. We apologies in advance that we have some kind of negative stuff to talk about this week, but we will be covering the news first and foremost, including some massive news out of Electronic Arts and Xbox. And then we will transition to a discussion on Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. But before we do that, Mike, the last time I had you on the show, you were gearing up to launch a game on Steam called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tactical Takedown. And now that game is on Switch. First of all, how has the reception been?
It's been really good. We're really happy. I think that people were not quite sure what to make of it because the art style is a little bit different, and we have this very board game aesthetic, and there were some people who were like, I don't really understand, there's no animations, why can't I play as all four turtles? But the people who get it really get it, and they're really enjoying it. And then when we launched on Switch and Xbox on the same day, so a couple months ago now, mid-August, we doubled the size of the game for free. We released this remix mode, which I was the guinea pig for, because I've played the game, other than our level designers, I've played the game more than anybody else on our team. And they kind of threw the worst things they could come up with at me. And it was absolutely brutal. So there were a couple times I had to tell them to turn the difficulty up, but there was one or two times I'm like, all right, if I can't finish this level, I don't know who's going to be able to finish it. So we hit this point where it's like really, really difficult, and it is really for our sickos. Internally, we called it sicko mode, but it's a lot of fun. And if you haven't yet had a chance to play it, please go check it out. I'm pretty sure we are part of the Steam sale right now. Let me just confirm that, because I don't do that work as part of the studio.
I thought I saw that it was 15 on Steam. Or is that the standard price?
Standard price is 20. We are on sale 20% off.
Okay, well, there you go. And, it is also on Switch. And did you learn anything about publishing a game on a Nintendo console? Because I'm sure that is quite different from publishing a game on Steam.
Oh, you triggered my trap card. Yes. Yeah, we learned a lot. This is not the first game that I've been part of shipping on Switch, but it is the first one where I was leading production, because I shifted from licensing producer to lead producer on our post-launch and porting efforts. One thing that I can say as a blanket statement is that console backends are challenging. They are arcane magic. You need to really understand what it is that you're looking at, and then hope that someone else can give you the real story, because there's a lot of documentation. I'm not going to say that it's all great, and that's kind of a blanket statement across console platforms. But if you're thinking about launching a game on Switch, the best piece of advice I can give you is leave yourself more time than you think you need, and then add some more time. And the other thing about Nintendo specifically is that you may be aware of this, I know you are, but Nintendo, NCL, which is Nintendo Corporation, in Japan, and NOE, which is Nintendo of Europe, and NOA, which is Nintendo of America, they're they're different entities. And they all have their own slightly different rules, and there are different people you're going to need to deal with. And the answers you might get are going to be slightly different. So make sure that you are, again, leaving yourself plenty of time so that you can navigate all of those different channels in the way that you need to.
Yes, I, as somebody who has been in the games industry, covering games at least for over 17 years now, I am definitely well aware of the different branches of Nintendo and how sometimes those you'll get different responses from different branches. So yes, that makes sense that it would only be accentuated when you're publishing a game with them.
Oh yes, and one day you and I will have to have a conversation over a beverage about what it's like to be part of a Nintendo Direct.
Oh boy, I bet that's
yes.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that.
We'll talk.
Well, if you want to check out TMNT Tactical Takedown, which by the way I've played a good amount of, and it is a lot of fun, especially if you like the kind of like if you haven't heard me talk about it before, it's kind of like a hybrid of like turn-based tactical gameplay and like the traditional like arcade beat 'em ups that TMNT is so iconic for in its past. It's currently available for $20 on Switch, and not officially an eShop Gem of the Week, but it certainly fits that billing. So I recommend you checking it out.
I would have felt really bad about being, oh, my eShop Gem of the Week is the game that I'm the producer of. But thank you so much for the kind words, and we really appreciate, kind of all the support that you've given us. And, Amanda talks about how wonderful the interview that she did with you was, and we continue to be super grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, it was great chatting with her for Game Informer. And like I said, I really enjoyed the game. So I'm hoping to push through to the end eventually here. But like, man, this year has been sneakily busy as heck.
Have you reached the last act of the game yet?
I have not.
Oh, hit me up when you do.
Okay. Well, that's enticing. Mike, as a business-facing guy, before we go into the news and get into like the big topics, I want to talk to you about one of the big topics from last week.
Sure.
And that is Doug Bowser retiring from Nintendo of America and Devin Pritchard sliding into the role of president and COO of Nintendo of America at the start of the year. What was your reaction to that?
Not a whole lot of surprise, honestly. And we'll talk about this, and I'll put that in context when we talk about EA.
Okay.
But not a whole lot of surprise. You have a president of an organization that has taken the company through a huge generation with the Switch, launched the Switch 2 in a very difficult environment, a lot of uncertainty in the world because of the tariff situation. So it's understandable that he might need a little rest. And you see this often. You see that that organizational leaders, they finish kind of a crown jewel of their time in that role, and then they take a step back. As for Devin Pritchard, I'm seeing a lot of people who don't understand who she is. And I think that's a huge mistake because she's been at the company for about 20 years. Mm-hmm. She's been there longer than Doug Bowser was. And people I've seen online are really skeptical about her. I'm not. I think this is a great decision. I'm very excited to see what she does in the role.
Yeah, and I made this point when we covered it last week, and it was like we felt like we were just getting to know Doug Bowser in that role, and then he's stepping away, why it felt so unexpected for a lot of people, I think. But I also think that in contrast, if you look at prior NOA presidents, they were there for so much longer. Like Reggie was there for, what was it, like 15 years?
Yes. And that was a big part of his identity. And I think that he was much more forward facing than Doug Bowser was. Not that Doug Bowser was, not that he hid from the public, but Reggie was very much the face of Nintendo at a moment where Nintendo needed a very positive face. The Wii was strong, absolutely, but the Wii U was such a miserable moment for Nintendo. And Reggie, I think, was a big part of what kept people excited about the future, and that this wasn't the end, that Nintendo wasn't going to go the way of, Sega, for instance, and get out of the business. So he had a very difficult moment there during the Wii U. So this isn't the same. The Switch was so powerful. Nintendo's at the top of its game right now. But launching a new system, especially at the price point that it's at compared to where the Switch was, that was a very difficult campaign. And they kind of took it on the chin. And I think they deserve some of it for the communication around the launch of the Switch 2. I think it's all working out for them. I don't expect that price is going to stay the same. I expect that we've seen Sony raise the price. We've seen Microsoft raise the price. There were already some warning shots that, Nintendo might raise the price on its hardware because they raised the price of the Switch after the Switch 2 launched. So I guess my thought here is, as a side note, if you are considering a Switch 2 and you have access to purchase one and you have the means to purchase one, I would do it now, which is not something we would ever say in a previous generation.
Yeah. Yeah, usually it goes the other way where it's like, all right, yeah, it's been out for 2 years now. It's going to get cheaper, but that's kind of been the opposite of the way things have worked recently. And
yes.
I don't see that slowing down anytime soon, unfortunately.
No, especially with some of the news this week.
Yeah. So before we jump into that news, just want to remind everyone you are listening to the All Things Nintendo podcast. This show arrives every Friday into your podcast feeds completely free. But if you'd like to support me and allow me to keep on making these episodes, you can join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month. That gets you access to the community Discord, which lets you chat it up with fellow listeners of the show, plus get you priority access to Q&A episodes. But there are also $5 and $10 tiers that get you access to early and ad-free episodes, plus shout outs at the end of every show. Just go to patreon.com and search All Things Nintendo. It would really help the show continue each and every week if you were able to join up. So, Mike.
Yes.
Not a ton of news stories this week if you go by pure volume, but we have some heavy hitters.
Yes.
We're going to grab some smaller ones to get them out of the way because they're kind of thematically different here and a little bit more lighthearted before we get into
I'm glad we're doing some lighthearted stuff this time before we dive in, man. Whew.
So, Shinobi Art of Vengeance. Have you had a chance to check this one out?
I have not, but I've heard nothing but amazing things.
I've said on multiple occasions it's one of my favorite games of 2025. As of now, it's my game of the year 2025.
Wow.
However, I am a few hours deep into Ghost of Yote, and that might be taking the slot of that because it is so good so far.
Very cool.
But Shinobi Art of Vengeance, we knew already that it was getting post-launch DLC in the form of a level starring villains from other Sega games. So we already knew that it would be 3 villains, and they got the obvious one out of the way first in Dr. Eggman from the Sonic franchise. Then this week, they announced kind of a deeper cut for villain number 2, and that is Death Adder from the Golden Axe series.
Wow.
Right? So there's going to be a third villain announced at some point in the near future. Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot. Any guesses who that might be? So it's from a Sega series.
Ooh.
We already have Sonic off the table. We already have Golden Axe, which may have been a lesser known thing. I'm immediately inclined to go with something off the wall, like a car from Crazy Taxi or the DJ guy from Jet Set Radio.
That's a good one. I was thinking, do you remember in Yakuza, there's the giant guy who steals your money?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
that would be hilarious.
What is his name? Oh,
and he has a ridiculous name. It's like, Mr. Steal Your Money or something.
Yeah. It is something like that. What about, from the Yakuza series is a good one. I think of I'm going old school with some of these, like Lan Di from Shenmue, because he's like a martial artist, so that might make sense thematically.
I mean, it's also Sega, so it could be something Persona related. I
was thinking that too. A lot of the bosses in Shinobi are like giant monsters, so Lan Di would be cool, it's like an expert martial artist, but also does he really fit in the theme of being like this monstrous creature? If you really want to go old school, I was thinking maybe Janken the Great from Alex Kidd, who is also a martial artist. I also think that you're right. Persona series is ripe for characters they could fish out of there.
I mean, if they're pulling Golden Axe, they could also pull Altered Beast.
I was thinking that as well. Yeah, that might be a good answer right there. It's also worth noting that Sega now owns Rovio, which means it
could be a giant pig.
Exactly. It's not entirely out of the question that we'd get an Angry Birds pig. There's so many different possibilities here. I have no idea what it could be.
It could be a Phantasy Star villain too, for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, they might go deeper with the deep cuts here, but I would be surprised. Kind of like they love crossing over with Persona in their games. Like, I feel like as soon as they had Atlas under their umbrella, they were like, let's put Persona 5 characters in everything. Which, I mean, I guess that was shortly after they acquired Atlas, but still, you get the point.
Well, and that, I mean, there's so much style in Persona 5 especially. The Persona games are very stylish, but Persona 5 was built around like style and fashion and, just the way all of those characters look. I mean, Persona 3, it's like they're pretty much showing up in their school uniform with the C's armband on. Persona 5, the masks, the trench coats. It's like, give me more of that.
Hey, I am a diehard Persona 5 fan, but I will play the crap out of Persona 3 Reload when it comes to Switch.
Yeah.
I already reviewed it on Xbox back in the day when it came out. And then, of course, I am stoked for the Persona 4 remake that they announced earlier this year.
I really hope that we get some of the deeper cuts there as well. Like, I would love to see Persona 1, both Persona 2 games kind of make their... make a return. Whether that's just a remaster and a refresh or a full remake, I think that there are really interesting stories there. They're much darker than... Persona 3 was a really dark game, but then it started to brighten up a lot with 4.
4 was all about a murderer that comes out of your TV and displays your body publicly after he's done with you.
Right, but it was a happy murder thing, okay. I guess. It was TV. TV magic.
Yes. Persona 5 starts with a literal child predator, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd call those lighthearted adventures.
Okay, not so much lighthearted, but I just mean brighter in tone. Like,
fair enough.
The colors, like you get to 3 and you get a lot more color and a lot more, liveliness. 1 and 2 were much like the aesthetic matched the tone of the story a little bit more closely.
Fair enough. By the way, on the topic of Shinobi Art of Vengeance, some people did write into me after my glowing review of Shinobi Art of Vengeance to let me know that the Switch 2 version kind of sucks due to some resolution problems. I have not tried it out yet, but Sega did recently put out a patch that alleges to have fixed that resolution problem. So cool. If you haven't checked it out already, maybe it is worth a look on Switch 2 once again.
Hey there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's episode, why not check out The Next Session, your D&D agony aunts there to answer all of your questions. Join Adam and Alyssa as they answer questions sent in by listeners like you about how to solve the problems that come with running and playing in all sorts of different tabletop scenarios. Available wherever you get your podcast.
All right,
nice.
So next up, a game that I have been looking forward to has unfortunately been delayed from the end of October to the end of November, and that is Terminator 2D No Fate. And it is a 2D pixel art style retelling of James Cameron's Terminator 2, which is extremely random, but also I am so on board for this. And it's also, some would say arguably the greatest action movie of all time.
It's so good. And man, I really, really love this trend that we're seeing because we saw it with the Halloween and Evil Dead collection. So we had this little period. I think we're still in it where everything went to arcade beat 'em up. So there was the G.I. Joe game that came out, obviously Shredder's Revenge, and there were a number of others. Having them go to this SNES style, Sega Genesis era, 16-bit era, side-scrolling action game, I freaking love that.
I do too.
That's my childhood right there.
Absolutely. Like, give me games like the old school Batman games. Those are so much fun. And that's not really a side-scrolling beat 'em up, just kind of like a 2D action title. And that's what this seems to be. And I will say, to their credit, rather than pulling a Nintendo or PlayStation or Xbox move and just saying vague, quote, market conditions to account for their product shortages or price hikes or whatever, Bitmap Bureau just comes out and names it. They say, quote, "This adjustment is due to ongoing global trade and tariff changes that delayed shipments of the components for our Day 1 and Collector's Editions. Because we are committed to launching all editions together, this new date applies to both physical and digital releases worldwide." So, Mike, this is going to kind of segue into our next topic, but we've seen these tariffs impact the Switch 2 pre-orders. We've seen it increase the price of both PlayStation and Xbox, and now we've seen it delay games. I guess, at the risk of getting too negative here, what is the next step for these tariffs in terms of impacts on the industry?
So we still have some hope here. So the Supreme Court, has been ruling on a number of things through kind of like an emergency docket. It hasn't been part of the normal docket. So they are about to go back into session soon. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but it's soon. On the docket for them to do a full review of, and again, not going to get into the politics of it, but we can say factually the court has been siding with the administration. That may not be the case when they review this, but tariffs are on the table. So the courts will be reviewing whether or not the president has the authority to issue tariffs kind of in the way that's been happening. Now, if the court says, no, you can't do that, that's not within your purview, suddenly we hit the reset button. Mm-hmm. But my big question is, do we see prices come back down?
That's the thing, though, is once that genie is out of the bottle, it's rare that they will react in the other way, right? Like, right. It's almost like, all right, COVID hits and a lot of companies ask their employees to take like pay cuts. How many of those companies really made their employees whole after their businesses were kind of, sustained?
Well, let's hope that the ones who took PPP funding did.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole lot of fraud around that as well. But
yeah.
So in terms of what happens next, honestly, if the court says, yes, the executive is allowed to issue tariffs on a whim, that's not great because we're always getting caught off guard. So there's a number of things in play here. The level of the tariffs is one, but the removal of the de minimis exception is a huge one. So if you buy something inexpensive from overseas prior to all of this nonsense, you wouldn't be subject to tariffs. You would just get your item shipped from overseas. It would cost what it costs. You pay relatively normal shipping fees and it shows up. So if you're ordering on Temu, or let's say Wish, if that's your thing, then you're not really worried about it. Now, anything that you order that's being shipped from overseas, even if it's a low cost item, is going to be subject to those tariffs. We have seen the willingness to go above 100% in terms of tariffs. Where it stops, I honestly don't know, because it does not seem to be happening with any measure of logic or strategy or endgame, other than this belief that, oh, well, if we raise the tariffs, then suddenly everything will be made here in the United States. Well, that's not the way things work. Mm-hmm. We lack the knowledge, we lack the infrastructure, we lack the manpower to do some of the things that have been centralized in Asia, for instance. So you can raise that tariff rate, and the only people it's going to hurt are the average American when they open their wallet.
Yeah, it would take decades to make an industry that can manufacture at the rate that we need in this country, within this country, based on how much we've outsourced all that stuff and the globalization of all of these different processes. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the future holds for games, like in terms of like how these continued vague market conditions, as all these companies keep saying, will continue to evolve, and the volatility of how it's been, where it's like, all right, tariffs one day, all right, no tariffs the next day, all right, more tariffs than we even thought before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big tabletop guy, and maybe Miller's talked about this as well, about what's happening in the tabletop space, but we don't have the infrastructure here to generate the components, especially when you're talking about injection molding, for games that are heavy in miniatures. We just don't have it here. So we're seeing costs go up on shipping and, any of the related things to shipping and handling, which would include tariffs in this case. But we're seeing people struggle, and we're seeing companies suffer because when a consumer goes to Kickstarter, for instance, or any of the other crowdfunding campaign or sites, and they hear from people who have backed things ages ago and saying, "Hey, we're holding off on manufacturing for the United States. At some point, we promise we're going to deliver. We don't know when that's going to be, but we have to watch the tariff situation and try to strike when the iron's hot, when things are at their best for us." Mm-hmm. But the number of emails that I've gotten about, hey, we're asking you to pay an additional tariff fee. Some of them are optional, like, hey, help us out here and help us cover this. And some of them are, you're not getting your game unless you pay us another $50.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a great situation, which does kind of segue right into our next news topic, which, again, apologies that the next two topics are not the brightest and
I am
sunniest.
the harbinger of bad news, man.
I know. But speaking of price hikes and product shortages and Xbox specifically, Mike, I have been an Xbox Game Pass subscriber since day one.
Me too.
I've constantly called it the best deal in gaming.
Me too.
And maybe it turns out it was too good of a deal because just as I was starting my day yesterday, I got an email from Xbox PR which said, quote, introducing upgrades to Xbox Game Pass. And on the surface, that sounds cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mike,
Yeah.
you've been in this business a long time. I've been doing this. I've been covering this industry for 17 years. And I know a spun subject line when I see one.
That's the hand on your shoulder before the foot hits your balls.
So we'll get to that. But let's start with how Xbox frames this through its positive lens, okay?
Sure.
Email talks about giving players more flexibility through the expanded plan offerings. You can now do the Essential plan, the Premium plan, and the Ultimate plan, which I'm currently subscribed to the Ultimate plan. All of the plans now work across PC, console, cloud, which is an upgrade. And they're also offering a better reward structure for when you buy something. And the maximum amount of rewards you can earn per year is dictated by which tier you're in.
Capping at $100, right?
Yeah, I think it was $100 for the Ultimate plan. So the plans all support unlimited access to Xbox Cloud gaming, with each tier getting progressively more higher priority. Online multiplayer is now in all tiers, which is something that is good because that was not something that was in the lowest tier prior to this. And there's different in-game benefits. They specifically highlight Riot Games and League of Legends for in-game benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And Game Pass Ultimate is giving access to more day one games than before, plus Fortnite Crew, Ubisoft Plus Classics, and Xbox Cloud Gaming streaming up to 1440p, which also means Xbox Cloud Gaming is exiting beta officially. So it's finally fully delivered here. So to boil it down to numbers, the Essential plan is going to give you access to more than 50 games. Premium gives you access to more than 200 games, and Ultimate gives you access to over 400 games. So all that sounds great, right?
Sure, until you talk about the pricing.
Yeah, that's where the catch is. Game Pass Ultimate is getting a 50% price increase and will now cost
100%. Oh, no, 50%. It's going to 30.
$20 to $30 a month. So it's worth noting that at the start of 2024, so, about a year and 9 months ago, Game Pass Ultimate was just $17 a month. And now with this increase to $30 a month, it will be $360 a year, which is twice as expensive as PlayStation Plus Premium and more than 7 times as expensive as Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. And obviously we can give the caveat that those services all do different things.
Sure.
But the core functionality is similar enough. And also it's worth noting that Xbox Game Studios games are no longer day one on any version of Game Pass outside of the $30 a month Ultimate plan. So if you were just subscribing to this for the day one Xbox Game Studios games, it no longer makes financial sense to do this, because if those games, say, are $70 a month, that would mean they would need to deliver a game on Xbox Game Studios publishing that you would want to play on average just over 2 times or once every 2.2 months is
right.
how the math would work out. Otherwise, it just makes sense that you should buy them.
Yeah.
And
I think we can lump this conversation in with the conversation about the Ally, the Xbox branded Ally. When you look at the Ally X and you're like, oh, that's $1,000. And the first question you ask with any new tech product and anytime you have a new service is, who is this for? Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the question around the Game Pass shift is, who is this for? Now, I can answer that question a lot easier with Ultimate than I can with the Rogue Ally X.
Yeah. So,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, they're transitioning people who had the lowest tier to the Essential plan, which still costs $10 a month. So that's affordable. The Premium costs $15 a month, which gives their new disclaimer here, since you don't get the Xbox Game Studios games day one anymore, says that Xbox Game Studios published games will hit within a year of release. Mm-hmm. And then as you've gotten into, we've gotten a whole bunch of price increases on hardware. The Series S now costs between $400 and $450, where the
Wild.
Xbox Series X can now cost up to $800.
I know, it's nuts.
Oh my gosh. But that
How
is
did we
the 2
get here?
terabyte version. But like nowadays, like you almost need 2 terabytes for a massive system like the Xbox or the PlayStation 5. And as you had alluded to, the ROG Xbox Ally is $600, or if you want the ROG Xbox Ally X, which is the one that you want, $1,000.
$1,000 in this economy when grocery prices have effectively doubled in price. Here's the thing about, like, I will be honest, I have also been a Game Pass subscriber since day one. I also have said multiple times best value in gaming. That is no longer the case.
No.
And I think it's important.
Back to the orange box, baby.
Oh, yeah, back to the orange box.
Best value in gaming, orange box.
100%. So you look at the new Ultimate at $30 a month. If you already subscribe to Ubisoft Plus, and I can't imagine that there's a ton of those people. Like, you would have to be the biggest diehard Ubisoft fan for that. And if you are a Fortnite player and you have already subscribed to Fortnite Crew, if you happen to be the person who subscribes to everything, you are probably going to recognize a savings here. Because you're going from $20 to $30 and immediately Fortnite is covered. Because that's like $12 a month. And then the Ubisoft stuff is nice to have. Sure. But if you already are just interested in first-party games in the day and date, because the day and date was really the powerful thing here.
Yep.
Because if you're a Forza fan and you're excited about Forza Horizon 6, and now you're like, in order for me to get that day and date, I can either purchase the game or I can pay $30 a month and if I play that game for 3 months and that's the game I'm interested in, I'm better off just buying the ultimate version of that game, which is probably going to be like $110 or something like that. And you get all the stuff, because as we know, they'll ship you as part of Game Pass, the standard version, but give you a way to upgrade into the ultimate version. To Microsoft's credit, they have been very good when games get delisted about giving enough heads up and discounting the crap out of it. And in cases where you purchase DLC for a game that gets delisted, that you were playing the base game as part of Game Pass, they've been giving people the base game. So they've done some good things along the way. I think this pricing, at the same time where Sarah Bond is saying that, oh, Game Pass is profitable, you're rubbing salt in the wound.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of salt in the wound, this news comes like pretty soon after Xbox laid off thousands of employees, closed down the Initiative studio that was working on the Perfect Dark reboot. I guess, like, what is this console price hike when combined with the price increase in Game Pass and the extremely high price of the ROG Xbox Ally X? What does it say about not only, like, the place in this increasingly turbulent games industry, but just Xbox's overall strategy in the gaming space?
I don't want to be a doomer about it, but I think that consumers who are looking at this, especially people who primarily play on Xbox, looking at this and saying, is there going to be a next generation Xbox console? There are reasons to ask that question. Now, I'm not saying that the answer is, of course, there's not going to be. No, I have no insight into it. They have said that the next console is in development. What that ends up looking like and what the form factor is, who knows? But what I'm seeing here is, it used to be you could buy an Xbox Series S and have Game Pass, and you would have a really robust library at a pretty affordable price. Now you've got the Xbox Series S, which is less interesting at its current price of $400, you said? Because I don't have it in front of me.
$400 and $450.
Yeah. I look at that and go, and then you're going to pay... if I want to avoid buying games and I just want to rely on Game Pass, I'm going to be paying $30 a month. So that's committing to, let's say, $760 right out of the gate, because there is no subscribe for a year and get a discount anymore. No. That's gone. I have a hard time looking at this as anything other than we want to get out of the console business and we are focused on maintaining a gaming business, but this is an Xbox ad campaign really feels to me like that is tipping the hand about the future. Now that doesn't mean there's not going to be a console. They might do something for next generation, but I don't know that it's going to be the priority.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure a lot of people are listening to this being like, why do I care? This is a Nintendo podcast. But this is, I mean, if Xbox does, if this is successful, that's going to send ripples through the industry, and you'll see a lot of other subscriptions raise their prices. But if it's not successful and Xbox goes under, like that's also going to send ripples through the industry and impact PlayStation and pertaining to this podcast, Nintendo.
I would go so far as to say this is already impacting people who play primarily on PlayStation and Switch, because when you have a lack of competition is good for consumers. Mm-hmm. And honestly, so that was Sony's big argument when Microsoft was attempting to close the deal on the Activision acquisition. But competition is good for consumers because it means that people are competing across all 5 Ps, which is a marketing thing, but price being the one that consumers typically care about the most. Product, of course, is one, product features and placement and all of those things. But price is the one where people are really concerned. I am very surprised at this point because, as you pointed out, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is now twice the price of what people feel is a pretty overpriced PlayStation Plus Premium. I'm having trouble reconciling this. And we know that the cancellation website, the account website that you have to use to cancel, buckled under the load. People were clearly not happy. They moved quickly to cancel. And they questioned something that used to be, oh, this is a no-brainer. I'm just going to keep this. Yeah, $15 a month. I can do that. $20 a month. I can do that. I am getting things. For me, my kids played on Game Pass. Now it's like, I don't have they played it recently? Because I canceled for now. I'm a PC player, and they play on console, so it was good for everybody. I think they've made it more confusing for parents going into the holiday season. I think they've made it more expensive at a time where they've undercut probably the most powerful messaging they had, which was best value in gaming, which you've said, I've seen that all over the place. From a strategy perspective, this feels like decision-making driven by spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about price increases over time, you expect them for something new like this, because if you recall, there was the, pay $1, get the first 3 months for free or something like that. User acquisition. Those are user acquisition costs. And you keep your price low to get people in the door, because acquiring a user is more expensive than retaining a user. Given the number of people who have canceled, now all of those people need to be reacquired at some point. If Microsoft hopes to recapture that revenue, they're going to need to do something about it. So they're going to have to assess after this quarter what the subscription numbers look like. And if they have taken a nosedive, we'll probably see some adjustment. And that adjustment probably will be added features to the mid-tier to bring people back in at the mid-tier, what they were paying before. Because that's an easier selling proposition than you were paying $15 or $20 before. Here are some better reasons to resubscribe now that you've canceled at $30. I just don't see that happening.
The obvious choice to add features is just put the Xbox Game Studios games day one on that middle tier.
Yep.
Because I would keep that. But
I would too. I would be very happy with that. I wouldn't have changed a thing. And even if they wanted to keep the price the same, because they lowered that to 15, right? It's 20 going down to 15 at the middle tier.
Yeah. Well, no, 20 was what Ultimate was, and Ultimate is going from 20 to 30. The middle tier is staying at 15.
So, because you had Core and Ultimate were the two choices, I guess no, because Ultimate was the PC, and
it's such a weird they've changed it so many times. I've lost track. But
so that price is staying the same. I think now that they've merged PC Game Pass and Xbox Game Pass into just Game Pass, if you were to say to people, hey, you PC and console players who are paying $20, we're going to go ahead and we're going to throw those day one things in, and your sweetener on the Ultimate plan is Ubisoft and Fortnite. Okay, now this starts to make sense.
And better cloud streaming, that stuff. I mean, if you're the diehard sweaty gamer that wants all the Ubisoft and Fortnite and League of Legends perks, you're probably going to be the kind of person that cares about the stream quality when you're playing a cloud game.
I think if they're not talking to people, if they're not doing focus groups about this now, they should have done them before.
Yeah.
But if they didn't, and they aren't talking to people now, because they don't ask the question when you cancel, why are you canceling? And I think that's a huge mistake, because the feedback that they would have gotten, and because my feedback would have been, well, the most important thing to me is day and date availability.
Mm-hmm.
So you've removed that and increased the price for me to do that. I have really no reason to stay subscribed to this. I'll just buy the games.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's something they could definitely, they could stand to hear that stuff from people who, like yourself, like myself, have been longtime subscribers. And I've been a longtime defender of the Xbox. Like the Xbox One was my primary console, even over PS4 and the early parts of the Switch. And like, I understand the current, market conditions, as these companies like to say, are difficult, but it's becoming super pricey to be an Xbox player. And I know PlayStation they haven't been immune from any of this, nor has Nintendo, but it really has just been one thing after another for Xbox. Like,
I think for me, like I buy a lot of games physically because I have a big family. And I want to be able, I don't want them to have to be tied to one console, because we have 2 Xbox Series X's in the house. We have 2 PS5s in the house. And I want the kids to be able to play wherever they want to play. They want to play in the living room with their friends, or they want to play downstairs. Just take your game and go. But digital, there's already been this huge push to digital. And Microsoft isn't really producing physical discs as much anymore. And first party, I don't think we're seeing it at all. So this push for Game Pass made a lot of sense when they were pushing towards digital, and now they've kind of priced a lot of people out of that. Gaming can't be for everyone when you're making it so expensive that people can't access it.
I remember when 2020 was going on, and these consoles, the Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, and PS5 were all launching. I was on a radio show and they were asking like, hey, what's the best, like the best value? And I said, for somebody who's not like a diehard gamer, but like they want a new video game console for this Christmas season, this holiday season, what have you. And I said, get an Xbox Series S and then get a Game Pass subscription, and you will be set for all the gaming you could need, and it's going to be reasonably priced. Mm-hmm. That's no longer the case.
No, I made that same recommendation, by the way. It was a very strong recommendation, because we're talking about, so the Series S launched at what, $300?
I think so.
And then you're talking about, at the time, $15 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking, 30, 60, 90, 30 times 6, 180 a year.
Yeah.
Right? So you're talking your first year investment for getting access to all of these games was under $500. That's huge, especially when you look at the price of everything else around it.
And it's wild, because I had an Xbox Series S for the first few years that the Xbox Series was out. And then I guess it was 2 holiday seasons ago, I took advantage of an Amazon sale where it was like the Series X was down to $400. Mm-hmm. And I grabbed that. And that is now the base price of the lowest Series S.
It's wild.
So
never
wild.
Seen a generation like this.
No, never. Well, I mean, I'm hoping for the best here, because we've seen over and over again, industries, like you said, are at their best when there's competition. And I think that we've discovered in the games industry here that having 3 healthy platform holders is probably kind of like the sweet spot where it brings out the best in the industry without watering down the field too much. And so we'll have to see how this all plays out on Xbox's side. But we have one more news story to get to, Mike.
Here we go.
And it's a big one. So speaking of impending hardship that I hope that we're all wrong about, and speaking of a giant acquisition that we talked about with like Activision, we got some blockbuster news of an impending acquisition. So Electronic Arts, I would say one of the big 3 of like third party.
Well, at this point now, I mean, now that Activision's out of play, Ubisoft is hurting. I mean, it's EA and Take-Two up at the top.
Yeah.
I mean, except for, I'm trying to think like third-party Japanese companies that might...
Like Square Enix, maybe? But they
not anymore.
Yeah, I guess not.
And even Sega, I think...
Sega's been doing well lately, but...
Yeah, Capcom's been doing great, But I still think, and I haven't looked at the market cap on these companies, but I think at this point it's EA and Take-Two.
Yeah. Well, Take-Two is not putting out the volume that EA typically does, whereas like Take-Two just relies a lot on NBA 2K, WWE 2K, and eventually Grand Theft Auto and Borderlands.
And look, from a financial analysis perspective, Take-Two is so erratic, and especially since their $12.5 billion acquisition of Zynga, it's just... investors are sitting here going, okay, well, you're got to release GTA 6 because we've been sitting here patiently and it's time.
Mm-hmm. So Electronic Arts publishes The Sims, publishes all the games like Madden, EA Sports FC, NHL under the EA Sports label. Battlefield 6 is right around the corner. The Dragon Age series, Mass Effect, Apex Legends, Star Wars Jedi.
Yep.
Titanfall. I mean, could you imagine getting another Titanfall? God.
Not now.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, very much rest in peace now.
Well, the publisher has been acquired by a group called the Consortium. And not only that, it's being taken private.
Yes.
So the consortium consists of the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, Silver Lake, and Affinity Partners. So the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia already has the Savvy Games Group, which has stakes in Nintendo, Activision, Blizzard, Take-Two, Capcom, Embracer, and others. And it also owns Scopely, which is the company. It's a mobile game developer who owns Monopoly Go, my old daily player, Marvel Strike Force, and recently acquired Pokemon Go. But the fun doesn't stop there, as Affinity Partners is a technology investment firm founded in 2021 by Jared Kushner, who is Donald Trump's son-in-law, and former White House senior advisor. And meanwhile, Silver Lake is another investment firm with massive stakes in Twitter, Waymo, Expedia, AMC, and tens of other companies.
Yes.
And you might be asking, how much does it cost to buy one of the biggest third-party publishers? Well, if you look back at Activision, Xbox acquired them for just around $70 billion. And EA's price seems to be slightly lower, though still a crap ton of money, coming in at around $55 billion.
Yep.
And the way this is going to work, the EA common stock, so if you're a shareholder of EA, no longer going to be published or publicly listed on any public market. And shareholders are going to receive $210 per share, which reflects about a 25% premium on most recent valuation of $168.32 per share. Andrew Wilson, who has been EA's CEO for quite some time now, is going to remain the CEO, and the company will remain headquartered in Redwood City, California. And it's also worth noting, this is a tough one. The purchase price of $55 billion also includes a $20 billion loan taken out under Electronic Arts' name to JP Morgan Chase & Company, which represents the largest debt commitment ever by a single bank for a deal like this.
Yes, and we'll talk about what that means and how that's structured, I'm sure.
Yeah, so you've spent many years reporting on businesses. You have an MBA. You work in business development. We have so many directions we could go with this news, but let's start here. What was your reaction to this acquisition?
I am really glad that we had the heads up when Wall Street Journal broke the story on Friday, because 7 o'clock on a Monday morning for this news breaking, that's not cool, man. Like, that's not cool. We all needed our coffee before this stuff. It was because Wall Street Journal was pretty much spot on. It was mostly a confirmation. The $20 billion underwritten by JP Morgan Chase, we need to talk about that because it's not even as simple as it seems on the surface. So let's do some 101 stuff real quickly. This is what's called a leveraged buyout. And if you are not familiar with that, you might be familiar with one of the victims of a leveraged buyout, which is Toys R Us, which no longer exists in the United States. They have revived it in Canada, thankfully.
Hey,
so the brand lives on.
There's one location at the Mall of America in Minnesota.
Okay, well, that's good. You know what? I'm glad Jeffrey found a home.
Yes.
So leveraged buyouts, the way this works is it is essentially the opposite of ring fencing debt. And ring fencing debt might be a term that you heard in relation to Embracer Group when they spun off Asmodee and saddled Asmodee with all of the larger corporations' debt, which means that if Asmodee defaults on that debt, it does not touch the larger Embracer Group. So this is similar to that. What it means is if Electronic Arts were to go bankrupt, the private equity company would be fine. They would walk away with however much money they've made on the deal. And in the case of something like Toys R Us, which was purchased, by private equity firm Vornado for about $6.6 billion. By the way, that was the total value of that deal, just to give the magnitude of how small relative to EA that leveraged buyout was and how it killed that company. They own the land. So what happened was the PE company owns the land and then leases it back to the corporation. On top of it, the corporation then has to service that debt. So in Toys R Us's case, it was about $500 million a year. In EA's case, we're looking at about $1 billion of debt that needs to be serviced annually. That is a huge, huge amount of debt. Mm-hmm. And now EA's profit is higher than that. It's not like they're suddenly looking at that and go, well, this is going to put us in the red. Well, I don't think you would have had it underwritten. But at the same time, JP Morgan Chase, while they are underwriting the debt, they're going to be selling some of that debt off. And it's not going to go great because the debt rating dropped to a B, which is effectively junk status. That's terrible. That's bad, bad, bad news. So when you look at something similar, I want to call up the subprime mortgage crisis from 2008 and 2009, and it's not a one-to-one comparison. But when you look at all of this junk debt that's now going to be farmed out around the world to different banks, if EA were to default on those loans, the ripple effect would be enormous. So in order to make sure that doesn't happen, they need to ensure that they can service that debt. And the PE company, the PE company's involved. So the Saudi Arabian government, which is sports washing through its investments.
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about next. So yeah, continue.
Yeah. So, and we'll talk about that next. And Affinity Partners and Silver Lake, they want EA to continue to bring in the money that they're bringing in before they have to service the debt. So how is that going to happen? And it's going to happen exactly how you fear it's going to happen. It's going to be layoffs and it's going to be studio closures. And I think even worse. And one thing I do want to point out, that Affinity Partners, Jared Kushner's firm, was funded with Saudi money. So the amount of Saudi control that is in this deal is enormous. It's not just what it appears on the surface, it's even deeper. I am a little bit worried about what this is going to mean for the content of games, and you've seen that echoed in some former BioWare leaders who are talking about what the future of that studio might look like, and I think there's a lot of fear that this might be the end of BioWare, especially because those games have typically been catering to an audience, a more diverse audience. They've had LGBTQIA themes that has been central to the DNA of both Dragon Age and Mass Effect. And how do you make those games when so much of the money invested is Saudi money? And that government and that culture is not terribly LGBTQIA friendly.
Yeah, so you mentioned the term sports washing, and I,
yes,
as a big sports fan and a big fan of like combat sports, I have seen a lot of this. Kind of watching it from afar, waiting for it to really hit gaming in a major way. And basically, the notion of sports washing is that by investing heavily in entertainment or hosting huge events, they can kind of control or shift the narrative surrounding their country, which in this case has been, alleged to commit violence against those who would speak out against it, including but not limited to members of the press.
Right. And we're talking about the state-sanctioned murder of Jamal Khashoggi, who was a Washington Post reporter.
Yes. And we've seen this same investment fund from Saudi Arabia, headed up by Turki Al-Sheikh, invest heavily in the UFC, in boxing, in golf, and currently one of the hot topics is stand-up comedy. There's a big stand-up comedy festival that is happening this week, and we've seen a lot of comedians come under fire for signing on. And basically, they've literally come out and said, they're paying me enough to look the other way, is basically when people have asked them questions. And I mean, to be honest, I am at least happy that they're saying that out loud instead of, and one of them said that and they were fired from the gig. So Yeah, so let's go here. Is this just an extension of the sports washing? Like, I don't think that this is like, we've seen it in the sports world where it's like they don't really care too much about the return on investment from a monetary perspective. Their return on investment they're looking for is, hey, we can have this thing and we can have like our country painted in a better light, or we can run, like during a UFC broadcast, we can run tourism ads about come to Saudi Arabia and like make it look incredible. So what did they get out of this ownership of EA?
It's exactly as you said, they're changing the narrative. And, you know, we talked about kind of the spun headline and being able to suss out a spun headline very easily. The spun headline on this is, oh, well, we just want to diversify out of oil. Like, this is just a diversification. And I think that's a clever way of spinning it, but I don't think anybody's buying it, because it really is about, look at all these great things that we're invested in. Look at all this fun that we give you through our money and investment. We're good guys, see? And that's what we mean by sports washing, or as the term is now becoming more popularized, game washing. And they also own, they also now own Evo.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's, company, parent companies, because it's through Kidia, I believe, is where the investment came when Sony got bought out, because Sony was a part owner. So we're seeing this all over the place. And as you mentioned, it is not just Western companies. There's a lot of investment in Asian companies as well. You mentioned Capcom, Nintendo, and we haven't seen the end. And of course, the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Embracer Group, there was $1 billion in the deal that got closed, and then they were expecting a $2 billion deal to close. And of course, that got yanked out from under them, which was what led to everything with Embracer Group.
Yeah, it's, I mean, on one hand, there's a ton of money, and on the other hand, there's everything else. So
yes,
I can tell you that from talking to a few folks at EA behind the scenes, there is a lot of stress surrounding both, the uncertainty of their employment status, but also, just kind of the morality of continuing to do work at a company owned by this government and this investment firms. But that $20 billion loan in EA's name really sticks out to me the most, I think, out of this entire factor. And it seems like, they're going to be left on the hook for this, which is wild, since like the entire premise of this is like, hey, these companies have a lot of money. They're going to buy something consequential in the games industry to launder their reputation. But then they saddle EA with this $20 billion debt, which is, I mean, what are the potential consequences of the way this buyout was structured when, like, it seems like they're 1 or 2 bad years away from really having some problems here.
You're absolutely right. Now, I think they are positioned, and part of the reason why I think this was announced now, not only being close to the end of the quarter, but right before Battlefield 6. Battlefield 6 is previewing well. I think there's a lot of anticipation for it. I don't think it's going to hit their 100 million player benchmark that they threw out there a couple of months ago. I think that's beyond pie in the sky. But I think the game's going to do well. And I think when you see a game of that magnitude, because it is a pillar for EA, if you look at EA's pillars, it's sports, it's Battlefield, and it's The Sims. And those are the things that make the most money. Everything else is kind of underneath it, including Apex. So you're right. I think they're a couple bad years away. I don't think it's going to happen immediately. I think that if we're not even going to get a canary in the coal mine, because they no longer have an obligation to report their quarterly finances. And as I've said about this topic, whenever we get less information, it's a bad sign. We need that information to understand what's going on in the industry. So I am deeply worried about this. When you look at leveraged buyouts, they've fallen out of fashion in part because there's been government scrutiny. Now, less so under this administration, but Liz Warren has been out there talking about how bad LBOs are and how destructive they are to labor, to the fabric of, our culture as, in terms of, established and institutional, businesses. And it's the other piece of the stock buyback issue, which for those of you who don't know, stock repurchasing was illegal prior to the Reagan administration. The Reagan administration legalized stock repurchases. And what you've seen these companies, not just EA, a lot of these companies spending billions of dollars with a B to repurchase shares from the market to return value to shareholders. And as I said in my feature in Game Informer, that becoming the priority for these companies has actually been destructive because shareholders are only one stakeholder group. Mm-hmm. And when you over prioritize one stakeholder group, it means you stop paying attention to important things like the morale of your labor. The people who are making, and these aren't just like, they're not on an assembly line making widgets. These are people who have to be creative. And it is really hard to be creative when you are afraid for your job. And all we've had over the past 3 years, especially, is people afraid for their jobs.
Yeah. And it doesn't seem like it's trending in any other direction, unfortunately.
This week has been really bad.
Yeah, there was also Funcom had layoffs, the Dune Awakening developers, which that's their most successful game ever. So it's like, well, what do you want from us?
Yeah. And again, Microsoft has been a big piece of this, the ripple effect there. So we saw the layoffs at Crystal Dynamics related to Perfect Dark getting canceled. And then we saw now layoffs and studio closures at Avalanche, and that was Contraband getting canceled. So we're seeing these games getting canceled by a platform holder who owns a lot of studios, and the ripple effect throughout the industry is massive. It's a tidal wave. So, and it does start at the top. And my fear here is that what's going to happen is EA is likely going to try to sell off as many studios as it possibly can that aren't its top performers. BioWare has had a rough ride over the last couple of releases, the last 3 releases. So we're talking Veilguard, Anthem, and Mass Effect Andromeda. All 3 of those games failed to do what they were supposed to do in terms of what EA projections were. Just using that studio as an example, I don't know who buys BioWare in this market.
Yeah, I mean, the one that immediately came to mind for me was PlayStation, but like, I don't know. Like they maybe they could get a good deal on it at this point.
And that's the thing is, are we looking at another fire sale situation? Like we did with Thunderful selling for $5 million or whatever. 5 million with an M, which was ridiculous. The other thing I want to note here is just some apples to apples comparison. You mentioned the Activision deal, which was $70 billion, and this is $55 billion. I'm actually impressed that this is as high as $55 billion right now, simply because of the economic environments that both of those deals happened in. So Activision happened before things really turned. That deal was inked when debt was still cheap, when inflation was still low, when interest rates were still low. This is a deal that was inked with $20 billion of financing from a bank when interest rates suck, when the market is bad, when people are in a situation where they're not spending as much on luxury goods, which, let's be real, gaming is a luxury hobby.
An expensive one.
And well, getting more expensive. And, you have changing gameplay patterns as well. So Gen Z and Gen Alpha aren't buying games the way you and I do. They don't play games the way you and I do. And games as a service is a huge piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, I saw former Polygon staff member Chris Plant make this point on Blue Sky that Microsoft kind of bet that people were going to just keep buying games and the Game Pass value was that you don't have to buy games. You can just get them through this subscription service. But what they didn't account for were all these younger players who they'll just play a game from 2 or 3 years ago that keeps getting updates over and over again. And they'll just spend all their time doing that instead of buying the latest and greatest.
Yeah. And certainly subscription programs, are a piece of that conversation, but over indexing into games as a service and then doubling down on recurrent revenue by making what we call switching costs, where it becomes psychologically more and more difficult for people to leave what they're doing for something new. So when you've got battle passes and FOMO and the amount of, post-purchase transactions that have happened in a single game, suddenly you have a brand new game coming and why would I leave this game that I'm playing and enjoying, that I've invested so much time and money in, for this new game from the same publisher? Well, I'm not going to. And that's why you're seeing these games that are in franchises that are well established not getting the traction that you would expect.
Mm-hmm. All right, Mike, this has been a fairly dour segment of a usually upbeat podcast, but let's end on a bit more of a high note here. We've seen there are consequences when a publisher like Activision is acquired by another publisher like Xbox, as in thousands of layoffs that I mentioned before when we were talking about Xbox. Is there a potential good outcome from this? Like, what is the best case scenario from this EA acquisition?
The best case scenario is that without shareholders, public shareholders, forcing or creating an environment where fiduciary responsibility is the overriding motivation, there is hope that, well, we can take longer on our games. We can take those smaller bets. We can make more creative games. We can invest in things that are more trend related, that wouldn't be as sexy to shareholders because we don't have to deal with them anymore. Is that going to happen? I think it's a long shot, but I'm holding out hope.
That's all we can do sometimes, especially in increasingly stressful times, both in the industry and globally.
Yes.
But Mike, we're going to pivot hard here.
Let's do it.
We're going to take our first break of this episode. And when we get back, we will be chatting all about Super Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2. We will be right back. We are back, and Nintendo unfortunately has still not put Game Informer back on the pre-release code distribution list since we were shut down by our previous parent company. So while I would love to tell you firsthand about all the amazing things that Super Mario Galaxy 1 or 2 remasters on Switch 2 do, we will not have that opportunity. So instead, we are going to look back at the creation of these games the way I typically do during anniversaries. So as you know from the other segments that I do like this, a lot of my info is going to come from Iwata Asks interviews, and we got lucky since both Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2 were in the peak of when former Nintendo president Satoru Iwata was doing these conversations with developers. Mike, before we jump into this, what is your history with Super Mario Galaxy or Galaxy 2?
So I have played very little, and I have no excuse because I did have a Wii. I just didn't play these games, and I don't know why.
Are you a Mario fan more generally?
Oh yeah, like the amount of times I beat the original Super Mario Brothers, played the crap out of Super Mario Brothers 2, regardless of what you think of it, it's still a Super Mario Brothers game. I think what ended up happening is I started in college in 1996, so I fell off at the Nintendo 64 because at that point you just didn't have game consoles in your dorm rooms. It sucked. Sorry. And then, kind of GameCube happened and I wasn't there. And then I got a Wii, and then I bought a bunch of GameCube games because it was backwards compatible. And that's when I finally got caught up on Ocarina and Majora. And, but yeah, I never ended up playing these games, but I'm ready to.
Yeah, for listeners of the audio version, he has a physical copy that has arrived, and he is ready to throw it into his Switch.
Oh, yeah.
So I played Mario Galaxy when it first came out. I still remember it came out when I was in college, and I remember going to my college's Target and buying it just on a whim because I heard it was good, and I didn't really have anything else that I was playing outside of Rock Band. Which, rest in peace, Rock Band. This past weekend, or this weekend, it's being delisted on digital storefronts, which is really upsetting.
Pour one out for Rock Band 4.
Yeah. So I went and bought Mario Galaxy and was blown away. It's immediately one of the greatest 3D platformers of all time. And then Mario Galaxy 2 just felt like a continuation of that. And I think Mario Galaxy 1 is the slightly more beloved game, but it's not like one is extremely bad and one is extremely good. They are both extremely good, which is why I'm so excited that these are finally, at least Mario Galaxy 1 was on Switch very briefly in the form of 3D All-Stars. But now Mario Galaxy 2 is finally available on modern consoles. So we're going to dig into kind of the making of these two iconic games that are now out on Switch and Switch 2. So, according to Takao Shimizu, who was the producer on Super Mario Galaxy alongside Shigeru Miyamoto, the team had finished up Donkey Kong Jungle Beat and wanted to make a new IP. And Shimizu said, it was in the Iwata Asks interview, that he went to Miyamoto and said he wanted to create an all-original game. And Shimizu said that Miyamoto looked at him and in a sad tone said, "I wish you could make a game with Nintendo characters."
Aww.
So he was like, who am I to deny him? So the team at Nintendo began developing Super Mario Galaxy around 2004, and they tapped Yoshiaki Koizumi to be the director. And Miyamoto really wanted to make a bigger Mario game than ever before and drew heavy inspiration from the Super Mario 128 demo at Space World 2000.
Oh, wow.
Which a lot of people thought was a hint at a Mario 64 sequel because the title being 128. But it ended up just kind of being a tech demo showing how the GameCube could render like a bunch of different Marios on screen at once on like a 3D platform. And Koizumi actually directed that Space World demo back in 2000. So Koizumi and Miyamoto liked the idea of the spherical platforms for Mario to run around on. So they like thought about how can we make a game that is similar or like leverages this idea without just being like this in this tech demo format that the Space World demo was in. And so they kind of were like, oh, wait, it's right there in the name, space. So they built a bunch of mini planets for Mario to explore, complete with gravitational pull on each planet. And because of this, the physics system took 3 months to build. And I found a 2007 interview with IGN where Koizumi said they actually conceived of most of the ideas for this game before the Wii was even like fully in development.
Wow.
So Miyamoto was still based in Kyoto, but around that time, Nintendo had just opened a Tokyo development office. So the dev team was primarily based in the Tokyo office, and they would send ideas back and forth to Miyamoto between Tokyo and Kyoto to get his input. And at the time, the most recent Mario games were Super Mario Sunshine on GameCube and New Super Mario Brothers on DS. So there was actually a lot riding on this because this was the first time in many years that they were going to get a 3D Mario game. Were you a Sunshine player?
So I actually think that that's part of what ended up happening with me in Galaxy, because I bought Sunshine for the Wii and it didn't click with me. It's one of those things where I want to go back to it. It's one of those games I want to give another shot. But I think that I played a bunch of Sunshine. It didn't really click with me. It wasn't sparking that joy like Odyssey did. Like Odyssey was so good. So I think when Galaxy came around, I just didn't jump on it. And then of course it turned out to be utterly amazing.
It's the old saying that I always bring up of like games pay for the sins of their predecessors. So like when Madden 25 comes out, if 24 was bad, a lot of people are going to say, the last one sucked. I'm not going to get Madden 25. And I think that applies to a lesser extent, but still applies to like platformers and stuff like that.
I mean, I would say that was part of the problem with Guardians of the Galaxy when Square Enix released it, because they were coming off of Avengers, which wasn't really, people really had a hard time with it. And Guardians of the Galaxy was fantastic, but it just didn't pick up because people were like, I didn't like the first one. I didn't like the first Marvel game you did.
And a big thing that like Nintendo was really trying for is they wanted Mario Galaxy to come out in the launch window of the Wii. And Satoru Iwata, the former president of Nintendo, he said, at the release of the Wii, a lot of people were asking for a 3D Mario release. When the GameCube was released, there were definitely people saying that if Super Mario Sunshine was released at launch, things may have been different. I think Mario is a software that is burdened with such destiny.
Ooh, I like that line.
I like that line a lot. And go ahead.
This is never going to happen, though, because I just can't see them launching both a Mario game and a Zelda game at launch. And Twilight Princess was the game on Wii. Now it was also on GameCube, and that's how we got right-handed versus left-handed Link and the reversed maps and everything.
Yeah. So because of that mindset, when they revealed Mario Galaxy at E3 2006, they initially announced that Mario Galaxy would be released by the end of that year. And that ended up not being the case. And then the producer Shimizu said, quote, with this being the latest addition to the long-awaited 3D Mario game, We felt so strongly about this game that we were unable to have our fans play it unless we were able to adjust any and all elements that we weren't fully satisfied. So it was important to try to release this simultaneously with the Wii's launch, but we also felt it was much more important to make a game that customers would feel was really worth buying. We were so determined that we even thought of closing down the Tokyo office if Super Mario Galaxy received poor reviews.
Wow. You want to talk about a lot riding on a game.
I know, right? Talk about pressure.
Jeez.
So because of that pressure, Nintendo really wanted to ensure that it was doing everything it could to make sure Galaxy was as perfect as possible. So they delayed the game until late 2007, and then they reworked everything that didn't work, and then employed more more playtesters than ever before to polish and fine-tune it. And Koizumi was really drawn to the approachability of the Wii remote. So while he didn't want to take away from the tightness of the control that you would get from like the nunchuck and like pressing buttons and everything, he also wanted the game to control well regardless of how experienced the player was. So he used the Wii remote and the nunchucks to try and ease any problems that less experienced players had with something like Mario 64 or Mario Sunshine, where you jump around in 3D and you either get lost or you don't know exactly like where you're going to land. So he thought that swinging the Wii remote would make it more intuitive if you had Mario spin when you did that. So it would allow you a little bit of a softer landing. And Satoru Iwata had this mission of making games that anyone from age 5 to 95 could enjoy. So 5 to 95 kind of became a motto. And according to Shimizu, that was the motivating factor in the design of Super Mario Galaxy. And Koizumi, the director, started off by making a super easy version of the game. And then when Miyamoto playtested it, he said that it was way too easy. So Koizumi adjusted it from there. And then Koizumi still wanted to bring back some level of intensity that he felt was kind of lacking from Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine, because they had life bars that were 8 segments big. So he wanted to drop that down to 3 segments, but he balanced it by giving more 1-up mushrooms to compensate. I don't know about you, but I definitely replayed Mario 64 earlier this year. I never really got super far in Sunshine, but I felt like those games had a decently balanced difficulty curve.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially when you look at when both of those games came out, and this is a vestige of the GameCube generation, PS2, OG Xbox, and then, you know, with Mario 64, you're talking the Nintendo 64, where in 3D games, the camera was probably your worst enemy.
Yeah.
And I think that they had to compensate for that, and that increased the challenge of those games because jumping and landing where you intend to was really difficult. I will say the thing that I do know about Galaxy, and I did actually get my hands on it once on the Wii at Thanksgiving, because my cousins brought their Wii up and we were playing Galaxy, is the assist mode and how that has become part of Nintendo's DNA forward. You know, being able to hand the second Wiimote to a child and have them be able to help and feel like they're helping. Because, I mean, when my kids were little, I would just hand them a controller that had no batteries in it.
Yeah.
So that they would get to play with me. Yeah. But actually giving them something where they could actually see the results of what they were doing directly on the screen. And of course that carried forward to Cappy, and there's Pauline in Donkey Kong.
Yep.
So, you know, I really love that they've done that, because that really does deliver on that mission of being playable from 5 to 95.
Yeah, and that co-op mode actually was originally developed so that the 2 players were controlling similar characters and they would play similar roles. So I would assume, like, this wasn't anywhere in the interview, but like I would assume it was Mario and Luigi. But they couldn't figure out how to execute that in the best way. So Miyamoto did what Miyamoto does, and he came in and was just like, let's change this completely. So he upended the tea table, as the saying goes. And he said that this mode should be made for somebody who hasn't played a Mario game before, but it also does things that you couldn't do with just one player, while still allowing that second player to have some sort of tactile impact. And the result was co-star mode, where one player plays as Mario and the other player just basically aims their Wii remote and helps the first player out in different ways. So yeah, I mean, that ended up being one of the main cruxes of their approach to difficulty and ensuring that this is approachable for people of all skill levels.
It was so thoughtful, and it's one of those things as a parent where you could feel comfortable handing your kid a controller. And again, I didn't play a lot of Galaxy, and I haven't played Galaxy 2, but played a lot of Odyssey with my youngest. And I would only play it with her because she wanted to be Cappy. She wanted to do all that stuff. And it was great. Like, it was a ton of fun in a way that sitting next to your kid with an inert controller just isn't.
Yeah, for sure. Or like, I would let my brother play as Tails in like Sonic 2, and it's like, he would just like get lost in the screen, but like this is like you're always present, you're always doing something. It was a really genius implementation of co-op in a way that like, players could just jump in even if they've never touched a Wii remote before. So the soundtrack is one of the most iconic parts of this game. And Nintendo legend Koji Kondo joined with younger composer Mahito Yokota to create this huge orchestral score, which has become one of the defining characteristics of Mario Galaxy. But it actually took Yokota a long time to get to that point. Originally, he wanted to use Latin American instruments and musical styles, and he created like a prototype soundtrack for that. And he showed Koizumi his work, and Koizumi's like, "Yeah, I like this." And then Koji Kondo was like, "Nope, this does not fit the vibe whatsoever." And Yokota also took the idea that Mario was a cute children's game, which actually resulted in Kondo like setting him straight. He said, quote, Kondo said, "If somewhere in your mind you have an image that Mario is cute, please get rid of it." So there was a Nintendo article that came out around the time this game was released on the making of the game, and it said that Yokota actually almost quit because he was so mad at Kondo for throwing out his work.
Oh.
But Kondo was able to convince him to stay and try again. He was like, "Hey, but like think of Mario more as a cool character rather than a cute character, and try again." And so Yokota took that as kind of like a chip on his shoulder, took 3 months. And then after those 3 months, came back and presented with 3 different versions of soundtracks. I guess he was like, I don't want to like mess this up again. So he brought an orchestral soundtrack, a pop music soundtrack, and a mix of the two. And he presented them to Shigeru Miyamoto, and Miyamoto chose the orchestral one because it had this grand feeling like you would want when you're going out into space. So once Yokota had the go-ahead, he used a 50-piece orchestra to record the game's 28 orchestral tracks. And of the music in the game, Kondo only composed 5 of the tracks while Yokota did the rest. And Super Mario Galaxy came out November 12th, 2007 on the Wii, and was immediately reviewed as one of the highest scoring games of all time. Game Informer gave it a 9.75 out of 10.
Dang.
And Metacritic currently sits at 97 out of 100.
That's wild.
4th best scoring game ever, behind only The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Soul Calibur 1 on Dreamcast, and Grand Theft Auto 4.
Wow, that's bananas.
Right? No, it's mushrooms. The bananas would be if it was Donkey Kong.
Oh, true. My bad.
So by the end of 2020, Nintendo shared that it had sold 12.8 million copies of Super Mario Galaxy, making it the 9th best-selling Wii game of all time. So obviously, huge success, heralded as one of the greatest games of all time. Clearly a massive boon for Nintendo. And Shigeru Miyamoto had the crazy idea that they should release more than one 3D Mario game on the Wii to capitalize on this success. So he came to the team and he wanted to see if they could create just more Mario Galaxy content. And they started internally calling it Super Mario Galaxy More or Super Mario Galaxy 1.5. And so basically they took the idea that they just were going to create an expanded version of Mario Galaxy for the Wii. And they wanted a fast turnaround, so they actually set the development timeline of just 1 year. And this time they had Koichi Hayashida as the director, with Koizumi, who was the director of Galaxy 1, sliding into the producer role alongside another Nintendo legend, Takashi Tezuka. So Koji Kondo and Mahito Yokota returned to compose it, but they were joined by Ryo Nagamatsu, who worked on Mario Kart Wii, Wii Sports Resort, and New Super Mario Brothers Wii, and like contributing music to that.
Nice.
So the 1 year timeline for a sequel may sound familiar because that is exactly what Nintendo did in the N64 era with Majora's Mask coming off of the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And Satoru Iwata also made that observation, and he said that, both N64 and GameCube only got one 3D Mario game each. And Iwata actually asked Shigeru Miyamoto if Galaxy 2 felt like a Majora's Mask type of development cycle. And here's what Miyamoto said. He said, quote, "Broadly speaking, yes. For The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, we simply adopted the 3D engine from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, because when you make a new game, it takes a whole year just to make the player character movements." And then he continued with a separate quote saying, "We had put a lot of effort and time into building an engine that would allow players to feel comfortable controlling the player's character in the game. So we thought it would be a waste to just build the courses and then call it done. So for The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, we tried packing a high concentration of elements into an extremely compact world. So just as The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask built upon the foundation laid by The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, in making Super Mario Galaxy 2, we reevaluated the spherical environments of the first Super Mario Galaxy and noticed some things." So Miyamoto looked around and he basically realized that the team had not made full use of the planet environments. And he was like, after spending all this time looking at these levels in Galaxy 1, Miyamoto was like, there are so many places in the first game where we could have added these new elements, these secrets, areas for exploration. So originally that was the plan for the follow-up, where they were like, we're just going to like re-release this with a few new levels and like, some added secrets in the existing levels.
Which is a format that we are seeing now with, that has become popular on the Switch, and certainly with these upgrades to Switch too.
Oh yeah.
Kirby's getting one, of course. We saw it with Mario 3D World, with Bowser's Fury. Yeah. So
basically that was the impetus for Mario Galaxy 2 to have it be this Mario Galaxy 1.5. But as Miyamoto said, the developers got carried away and started making new levels. And then Miyamoto said, quote, "The next thing I knew, more than 90% of the courses were new, and I couldn't tell where we had kept anything from the previous game." So after Miyamoto realized how much new content had been put in the game by these developers that got really carried away, including the addition of Yoshi as a rideable character, they scrapped the old content completely and changed that 1.5 to a 2. And they started figuring out like what else could they address here. And one thing Miyamoto wanted to address was how easily players were getting lost in the 3D Mario games if they had never played anything other than the 2D Mario games. So he made it so the spheres were even more difficult to get lost in, aided by the camera. As you pointed out, Mike, the camera could have been in those early Mario games, the early 3D Mario games, your worst enemy. And so they started doing camera angles that helped translate the 3D action into a way that is as easy to comprehend as a 2D camera. And then they also played with gravity in ways that everyone would understand, even more so than in Mario Galaxy 1. So, I mean, there you go. That was your main concern.
I love revisiting these stories because they do give us a glimpse at what development was like at that period, where the challenges were, what the business priorities were, but also seeing some of those things, as we've discussed, carry forward into present day.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see this. And I mean, I think about that story and I look at something like Hollow Knight Silksong, and it's like, that's basically what they were doing there, where they're like, hey, let's just release DLC for the original Hollow Knight. And then they got carried away and they're like, oh, we made a whole new sequel. Sorry, everybody. We're going to have to wait 6 years before you play this DLC that we told you would be out pretty soon after the release of the original Hollow Knight. So yeah, I mean, that has something that has continued to grow in prominence in the industry, as you had indicated. And during the development of Mario Galaxy 2, someone actually approached Miyamoto with the idea of having Donkey Kong and Pikmin cameo in the game, which it makes sense. Pikmin are like cosmic characters.
Yeah.
And Donkey Kong got his start alongside Mario. but Miyamoto actually shot it down, saying that the Pikmin wouldn't work in the Mario universe, which is kind of weird to me, seeing as how Pikmin is kind of Miyamoto's like baby. Like he loves Pikmin. So I assumed like, hey, we had this high profile game, let's put Pikmin in it. But no, he did not want to do that. And he said other Nintendo cameos don't really have a reason to be in there, so we don't want to shoehorn them in.
Well, that's going to be very interesting when the Super Mario Galaxy movie comes out. Because I mean, Seth Rogen's got to be coming back as Donkey Kong.
You would think, but who knows? Because he wasn't in that initial cast list that they gave.
True.
So Miyamoto was actually not a fan of the story elements in the first Mario Galaxy, but he appreciated the way the team did it. He actually wanted the team to cut a lot of the story elements from Mario Galaxy 1 and focus on the gameplay. But then he saw it and he was like, okay, these are actually kind of cool. So he wanted to strip some more out of that, out of Mario Galaxy 2. But apparently over the course of like a 3-hour lunch with Yoshiaki Koizumi convinced him that by sharing the kind of tone that he thought Mario should have, like he was basically, Koizumi's idea was like Mario should be family friendly, but not childish. So like, we don't want like Mario to like be saying like things that like in kind of kid speak, right? But he should be like family friendly, that everybody could see him and be like, oh, that's a cute or cool character. And Miyamoto was actually convinced by this. He said, for Mario Galaxy 2, we wanted a suitable amount of story and movies, so we made lots of new enemies, but we wanted this game to be fully elaborated in keeping with the essence of this particular game. If we hadn't, some players would think things like, why is this enemy here? And be jarred out of the experience. So they needed to, in order to justify all these enemies being in there, they needed to have these cinematic elements to explain why all these new enemies are here. So they kept adding a bunch of additional content and made it actually more difficult than Super Mario Galaxy 1. And then another quote from Miyamoto saying, quote, it's a quite substantial game with, I'd say, about 20% more material compared to its predecessor.
Dang.
When I play it alone at night, I get worked up and pound the table and shout. And then,
I love him. I love him so much. He's so much fun to talk to. He's so effusive.
He's the best.
It does not surprise me.
I want to see him pounding the table and shout. I would love to see Miyamoto get upset.
Oh, God, I'd love to see it. So funny.
And then he continued saying, quote, it's difficult, though. It isn't easy, but the pleasure of overcoming those challenges is the real thrill of an action game. There are places that will confuse complete beginners who have never played a 3D action game before. To be honest, we were worried about that right up to the very end. So to help with this, Nintendo actually put out a DVD called Super Mario Galaxy 2 for Beginners. Oh my God. Which featured developers. I did not know about this. Yeah, it's great. Actually pretty rare. I saw somebody on Reddit actually found one at a used game store. And I was verifying that this is real because he just mentioned this offhanded in the Iwata Asks. And I was like, I don't remember that being a thing. So I actually looked it up and I saw somebody had found one. It's a pretty rare thing from what I understand. But yeah, the developers are basically showing off how to play the game. And like, they kind of towed the line of like, hey, this is like a thing you can pull off, to like going all the way up to like, hey, look at how good this developer is. You could get this good if you play this game, and like do all these cool things.
Nice.
So the game was officially revealed in 2009 and it was actually already almost done. But Nintendo wanted to hold release until 2010 for a very similar reason that you had mentioned, that like it would not make sense to launch it alongside the Wii when they already had the Twilight Princess port. And the reason they held it until 2010 was because New Super Mario Bros. Wii was coming out in 2009. So Yokota started composing the music, and he debated not doing another orchestral score because of how difficult it was to record with such a giant orchestra. But Miyamoto actually pressured him into doing it again because he insisted that players would want a continuation of that Galaxy 1 sound.
Definitely.
So not only did he do the orchestral soundtrack again, but this time it was a 60-piece orchestra. Dang. Which resulted in a larger sound, which plays off of the fact that this is a larger game. So it actually worked out really well. And again, extremely iconic soundtrack. So Super Mario Galaxy came out May 23rd, 2010 on the Wii. And what do you know? It is one of the most acclaimed games of all time.
Surprise!
So Game Informer gave it a 9.25 out of 10. So slightly less acclaimed by Game Informer than Galaxy 1. But it did receive several 10s throughout the industry. and it once again has a 97 out of 100 on Metacritic, which makes it the 5th best reviewed game of all time, one spot behind Mario Galaxy 1.
That's wild. I love it.
I know. And it sold nearly 7 million copies, or 7.5 million copies. Not quite as good as Galaxy 1, but still good enough to land it as the 14th best-selling Wii game of all time. And we're going to wrap up this segment with the traditional Where Are They Now? In the time since Super Mario Galaxy's release, Yoshiaki Koizumi has continued being one of the most important people at Nintendo. He produced Mario 3D Land, Mario 3D World, NES Remix, NES Remix 2, Super Mario Odyssey, and was the general producer of the Nintendo Switch. And he was also the creative executive on the Super Mario Brothers movie, and I would bet he's going to play some role in the Super Mario Galaxy movie, given his involvement with the Galaxy series. Takao Shimizu would go on to produce Ocarina of Time 3D, direct Star Fox 64 3D, and then before supervising development on Majora's Mask 3D. And I looked it up because he actually hasn't been credited on anything that I can find since he was the UI system director for the NES Classic in 2016 and the SNES Classic in 2017. But all indications are he's still at Nintendo. I just don't know what capacity, but it's kind of weird seeing as how he was so heavily involved with one of the most acclaimed games.
Maybe he's doing the Virtual Boy.
Maybe. And Koichi Hayashida, who directed Galaxy 2, would go on to direct Mario 3D Land. He would direct Mario 3D World. He would direct NES Remix 1 and 2. And he served as the producer on Captain Toad Treasure Tracker and Super Mario Odyssey before designing Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Nice.
So pretty good run there as well. And then as for composer Mahito Yokota, he went on to work on music for Skyward Sword, New Super Mario Bros. U, and Super Mario 3D World. And since then, he has ascended to the role of supervisor at Nintendo's audio department, where he has overseen the soundtracks for Mario Kart 8, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Super Mario Odyssey, ARMS, the Super Mario Bros. Movie alongside Koji Kondo, Donkey Kong Bonanza, and a ton more. And he also managed the main theme recording for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Ooh.
So all of these guys, great resumes. And that's not even talking about
seriously.
Shigeru Miyamoto and
course.
Takashi Tezuka, who we've already talked about extensively on past episodes. And remember how they were concerned about Nintendo EAD's Tokyo office shutting down if Mario Galaxy got bad reviews? Well, it was closed down anyway in 2015, and it was merged with the Entertainment Planning and Development Unit and moved back to Kyoto. So all those people, theoretically, unless they didn't want to move from Tokyo to Kyoto, were able to retain their jobs. And up till now, Super Mario Galaxy 1 was only available in the delisted Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which came out in 2020, back on Switch. But as of today, it's available standalone or as part of the new Galaxy and Galaxy 2 bundle that Mike is currently displaying. This release of Galaxy 2 is the first time since the digital release on the Wii U that Super Mario Galaxy 2 is playable on a modern console. And Mike, how excited are you to jump into these games after you've heard this this brief rundown of their development?
I am going to be doing that tonight, actually.
Yes. Two of the greatest games of all time in the palm of your hand when you pick up that physical edition, or they're available digitally. They're $40 a pop, or you can pick up at a slight discount of $70 for the bundle of Galaxy 1 and Galaxy 2. And as I said, available now. We are going to take our final break of the episode. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the road to Metroid Prime 4 and then get a quick eShop gem of the week from Mike. We will be right back. We are back for the last time this episode. And Mike, as I was planning this episode and kind of kicking around ideas of what we were going to talk about, you mentioned that you recently finished Metroid Prime Remastered.
Yes.
Which is an incredible remaster that hit the Switch in 2023. So incredible, in fact, that when I reviewed it, I gave it the score that is actually tied with my highest score in my entire time at Game Informer, which is a 9.5 out of 10. Mike, how did you feel coming out of that playthrough?
Oh, man, I loved it. It was one of those games where I had actually started it once before. And I think I had actually started the original GameCube version. And I just didn't click with it for some reason. And I'm a big Metroid fan, like Super Metroid and Metroid. Metroid 2 is probably my favorite Game Boy game. And I love Super Metroid. So the fact that I had never played these games kind of was haunting me, especially with 4 coming out. So I popped it in, and it was all I played for a week. And I absolutely loved it. 100% loved it. And I think that the level design is great. I think the enemy design, I think the fight against Ridley is unbelievably cool. And yeah, I now want to play 2 and 3 because 4's coming out.
Yeah, and therein lies the problem, because I have also played Metroid Prime 1, love it, and am extremely excited for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I've played Metroid Prime 4 Beyond at an event, the Switch 2 reveal event in New York back in April, and was extremely impressed by how good it's looking, how good it's playing. But I also have not played 2 or 3, and I know your big concern when we were planning this episode was, how will people who can only play Metroid Prime 1, unless they dust off their Wii, be able to follow the story going into Metroid Prime 4?
Yeah. I mean, look, these aren't narratively heavy games. I'm sure that you can that you're going to be able to pick 4 up, but I think that there is an evolution based on what I understand about 2 and 3 that would help. That would make people feel more connected when they jump in. There are certainly ways that we will not go into if you wanted to play those games. But I am hopeful that one of these upcoming Nintendo Directs is going to be Metroid Prime 4 focused. And that maybe they're sitting on a shadow drop for 2 and 3.
Yeah, it is weird to me that like the most accessible, we'll say legal and official way to play Metroid Prime 2 and 3 is by getting your Wii or your Wii U, plugging it in, and picking up the Metroid Prime trilogy, which I checked, and it is priced at its cheapest over $100 on eBay.
Yep.
I found a listing for $40, and I was like, what? And then I looked at it, it was like, box only, no game included. So, I mean, I don't know, like, so Metroid Prime 4, it's coming out on Switch 2 and Switch on December 4th. So, like, I guess Nintendo still has a shot here, but, like...
They do. And they've done that before where they've shadow dropped previous games in the sequel either right before or alongside. So I'm not giving up hope. I think that from a business perspective, it would be smart. Just because it's been... I mean, yes, Dread came out, and yes, you have Samus Returns. So you've had Metroid games coming out. But I feel like these games are so different because they are first person and because they handle first person in such an interesting way because of how they were first released and the controllers they were first released on. And look, more proof. You can release a Wii game on a system that doesn't use, something like a Wiimote and have it be successul. So I don't think there's a reason, like a control reason, why you wouldn't release 2 or 3 especially. So I'm hopeful. If only because you want to kind of re-inspire the base and get them more excited. So making 2 and 3 more accessible would be great. Now, 2, they could always turn around, because 2 was on the GameCube also, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. So they could turn around and release that as, via the GameCube digital games, through Nintendo Online.
Yeah.
But 3, there's no Wii channel yet for those games. So not sure what they're going to do.
Yeah. And I mean, Capcom is releasing Resident Evil 7, 8, and 9 on Switch 2 all on the same day in February. Yes. But that's not really Nintendo's style. Like, Nintendo likes to give gaps between their releases.
They do. There was, crud, and I can't remember. I think it was Pikmin. When Pikmin 4 came out, they dropped one of the previous games at the same time.
They did 1 and 2 when they showed off the first real in-depth gameplay of Pikmin 4. They already had Pikmin 3 on Switch.
Right.
But they put out Pikmin 1 and 2 together at the same time. But I don't know,
I kind of think we're going to get a bundle. I kind of think we're going to get something like the Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Galaxy 2 bundle for 2 and 3. And it's probably going to be $80.
But do they have time to do that before Metroid Prime 4 comes out in December? Because that's that's right around the corner, whether we like that fact or not.
Well, it depends. If they shadow drop the digital versions during a Nintendo Direct and say physical version, physical edition is coming, then they could get away with it. And they've done that before. I think 35th anniversary or the 3D All-Stars, wasn't that digital first and then physical?
Yeah, I believe so. But it wasn't that big of a gap. But yeah, they could always ship it. Yeah. But like, are we even going to get another Nintendo Direct before the end of this year?
Well, yeah. Didn't they say there was going to be another Kirby Air Riders one?
Yeah, but I don't see them shadow dropping Metroid Prime 2 and 3 at the end of the Kirby Air Riders Direct.
But I'm wondering, could they do a specific one for just Metroid Prime 4 in that same vein? And then
I mean, I guess they could.
At the same time. Or they could they could just shadow drop it.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't be surprised to wake up one day and see a trailer on Blue Sky. Surprise, Metroid Prime 2 and 3 are out.
It's entirely possible. It would be nice. I wish that they would do that. I'm constantly holding out hope that they put Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD on Switch.
You and me both, brother.
And if they would just shadow drop it, I think everybody would be happy. We don't need this big build up of like, all right, this game that came out in 2006 is finally coming to the Switch.
Yeah, it's not going to have a Silk Song effect. It's not going to ruin anybody's day, I don't think, if those games get shadow dropped.
No, but I think they might be spacing it out a little bit because they don't have a new Zelda game in the hopper like they have over the past several years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But all right, well, here's hoping that we do get Metroid Prime 2 and 3 before Metroid Prime 4. But like you had indicated, if they don't do that, it probably won't make the most sense, but it's also not the end of the world because like at the end of the day, it's probably a pretty standalone story. It seems like it is. It seems like it references past games a little bit, but not to the extent that you're going to be completely lost as though like, you're approaching this universe for the first time.
Yeah, I think if they had pulled the number off it, it would be less distant. But the fact that you've got 1 and you've got 4 and no way to enjoy 2 and 3 on a contemporary system, that's why my fingers are crossed.
It is very strange. So hopefully it happens, but we'll have to wait and see. But Mike, that brings us to the final segment of this episode. It's the eShop Gem of the Week. It's a chance for you to give a little bit of shine to a game on the eShop that might not otherwise get it. What is your eShop Gem of the Week?
Well, it's October. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 is coming out very soon, finally.
Finally.
I can easily recommend Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York. It is a visual novel. It is very engaging. And if you like the idea of vampires, but you don't know Vampire the Masquerade and how that whole thing works, and you might be interested in Bloodlines 2, this game is absolutely the one to play. It's relatively short. I think it's about 5 or 6 hours. And it has this wonderful glossary. So every time a new term comes up, it's like it shows up in red. It tells you that there's a new glossary entry. It explains everything about the world. It's a lot, and it's really well written. And it's got a lot of very contemporary, real references in it that make it feel more alive.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Is this a visual novel?
Yeah, it's a visual novel. Okay. And there's 3 of them, actually. There's the whole trilogy.
Yeah, so I guess you can immerse yourself in the world if you're looking forward to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2. This one looks like it's $20. Do you know if the other ones are also $20?
I think so. I mean, again, if you want to play it on Switch, absolutely. I mean, you can wait for a sale. I know they do go on sale because right now they're dirt cheap on Steam because the Steam sale's going on. So, but it's a perfect game to play portable. Absolutely.
I do love the art style. There's like a scene that I'm seeing here where it's like you're in the back of a car, I guess. Mm-hmm. And like
all the backgrounds, like they have like a motion graphic type thing. The decisions are interesting. It's a very social visual novel in that a lot of the puzzles you're trying to figure out are trying to figure out how to manipulate people and what responses are going to get the best answer. And there's a lot of variability. There's a lot of replay value. There's 3 different clans that you can pick from out of the 13 that are in the world. And there's a lot of different paths you can go in the game and different people you can meet, and because you have a limited amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Well, if that sounds like it's up your alley, it's Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York. And it came out in 2020, and it's currently priced at $20. If you'd like to check that out and get yourself prepped for Masquerade Bloodlines 2, then there's Mike's eShop Gem of the Week.
Yeah.
But Mike, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of All Things Nintendo and sharing your incredible business insight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. As you know, my Patreon and the associated Discord server are the best ways to get any questions or comments in. You can also get in touch with me at brian@allthingsnintendo.com or hit me up on Blue Sky or Instagram at Brian Quiche. Mike, tell people where they can find you online.
Sure. I am on Blue Sky a lot, probably more than I should be. Futterish.fsquared.biz. That's FUTTERISH.fsquared.biz. I'm also the co-host of the Virtual Economy podcast. If you are interested in more businessy stuff, our podcast is designed to make the business of games more approachable and accessible. And we're closing in on episode 200.
Wow. Well, you certainly accomplished that goal today with all the heady topics that we touched on over the course of the news segment. But that is our show for this week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of All Things Nintendo. Before we get out of here, I just want to give a special shout out to the $10 patrons of the show. Alex Stadnick, Andy Junkins, Ben Richland, Chaps My Ass, Dusty Beeman, Ian T. Clark, Jason Thompson, Jawar Hello, Johnny 5, Jose Villalobos, Joshua DeProy, KC Radio Man, Cody Gibson, Creeper 207, Paul at Drunk on Mako, Pratable, Rob McCann, Bobby Mac 265, Robert Sosa, Roberto Nieves, Roger Reichart, Russell Sayer, Smithy Poo, and Zek 3 Sword Sama. Thank you so much for your continued support of this show. You are the reason I'm able to keep doing this week after week.
Centuries ago, a war was fought, and Rigoria was destroyed. But in a last-ditch effort, there was one elf who buried a little bit of magic.
I guarantee anyone will find it.
Let's hope someone does.
One young man
Pops, what is this?
will have to end a war started long before his time.
Can't run!
His spell has taken hold. This is the last possible chance this world may have.
Echoes of Rigoria, now available wherever you listen to your podcasts.